HifiVega, back again with another video. This time, we're going to do 3 alternate methods of testing the crimp. So, these are the 2 kind of reigning champs that you guys seen in the first test. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set up, and I'm going to use a vise for a couple of them. So, we're going to test out these other methods, do the same thing. I'll cut into the lug, we'll see what it looks like. So, let me get that set up and we'll get started. Okay, so as you can see, I'm using the same type of wire that I used in the last test, using the same type of sky-high lugs. So I'm going to do 3 methods. One of them will be just good hold locking pliers. You know, a lot of people, that's what they do. They use these to crimp their lugs. So we're going to try that. Then I'm going to try 2 methods on here. The first method will be just squeezing it in the vise as tight as I could get it. And the second method will be using 2 bolts in here, and I will try to squeeze it in on both sides of the lugs. So we'll try all 3 of those, and we'll see how they perform compared to the other ones. Okay, for the first test, we're going to try just squeezing straight with the vise here. I'm just going to get as tight as I can with hand, and if I have to, I'll use a tool to help me get a little leverage. Okay, well, it's definitely on there. If I remember right, I used my pliers to try to pull them off, so we'll do the same thing again. This is not coming off, so it seems pretty good on the face of it. Your heat shrink should still fit fine over there. So yeah, we'll cut this open and see what it looks like inside compared to the other. But so far, that seems really good. All right, let me get set up for the next method. Okay, for the second method, normally I've seen 2 bolts used, but I don't have 2 bolts that are the same size, so I'm gonna use these bits, and let me get down here and show you. What I'm assuming the theory is that it's a smaller concentrated spot, you know, just right on there. So I've got them in here just snugged up, and I've got both flat sides. I'm gonna tighten it, and we'll see how it does, if it does any better or worse. That's about as good as I'm gonna get it. Back this off and see what they look like. Okay, so I've got a smaller spot there. By hand it feels maybe not as sturdy as the vise alone. Actually feels like I'm pulling it off there. So I could definitely pull it off. Maybe it needs to go in there a little bit longer with these. Maybe a little bit harder, see if I can get it going. Okay, well, let's see if that done any better. I can feel it moving, not as much maybe. Let's put it with the test here. Okay, so yeah, maybe I got a little bit better there. I can't pull it apart, although it did wiggle a little bit. So we'll do the same with that. We'll cut it open. Now for the last method, which I'm assuming is a pretty popular method, we're just gonna go with the old vise grips. See what we can do with them. Now, I'm not exactly sure if there's any certain method that people use to do this. I got it just snug so I can get it in place. I'm just gonna keep trying to get as tight as I can. Now I'm assuming that I'm going to want most of my pressure right there in the middle where all of them is. Now I don't know if people crimp on the sides or not, but I'm going straight for the middle here. I also have to take into account that this is a cheap pair of vice grips, so I don't know if that's going to factor into this at all or not, but it's the biggest pair I got, so. Okay, that is the absolute tightest I can get it with these. So, pull this off. You know, it kind of, I don't know, it's kind of close to just the vise, or the vise alone. Oh, that's not good. I don't want to call a total fail on this method because, like I said, this is a cheap pair of vice grips, old Harbor Freight pair, or maybe not. I'm not even sure where I got these, but maybe if you had some bigger vice grips, you could do better. Yeah, these they're not cutting it. So maybe I'll get one more lug and we'll try one more time to see what we can do. So let me set that up and then we'll be right back, try it one more time. Okay, so I've got it set back up with a new lug. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna crimp in the middle like I done before, but then maybe I'm gonna try to hit the sides a little bit and see if that'll help it hold better. Like I said, I'm not really familiar with this method, so I'm just kind of trying things here. Okay, so we've got it like we had it before. Maybe I can go one tighter like I did. See if I get it quick by forcing it down. Alright. Okay, now I'm going to try to see if I can't nip these sides. Maybe that'll help. Lock it in. Okay. So that feels a lot more secure right off the back. When I got them sides, I could still pull it. I think I could still pull it off, and I'm almost positive when I do this it's gonna pull them off these pliers, but let's check it out and see. No, it's holding up. I'm slowly. So I slowly pulled it out. Like I said, maybe it's the channel locks. You know, I know a lot of people use this method, but I didn't want to pull it all the way off because I want to cut it and see what it looks like on the inside. So before I get into the cutting, I just want to mention there's another method that I haven't tested, and that is soldering these inside these. And you know, sometimes people don't even crimp them; they just solder them on. And the reason I'm not going to test that is because when I do a solder like that, I use a different type of lug, and let me pull it out right quick. So, if I want to put solder in there, I will use something like this. Now these are 8 gauge, of course, but something like this, I can get the wire through, I can crimp, and then I can solder all the way through on the top of the wire. And on these lugs, I know some people do, I just don't do them like that. So, You know, you have to get someone else to test that for you. But, you know, when I do put solder in, I like to use these tips. I don't really, I mean, it's more difficult to get solder in these anyway, so I just wanted to get that out there because I know that will come up because a lot of people do it. So, you know, I don't do it, and this is how to crimp a lug, not how to solder a lug. So, all right, now that we covered that, we'll get them in the vise. I'll get the grinder out and we'll see what they do. Okay, so just like before, I'm gonna make 2 cuts. I'm gonna cut right here along the base, and then I'm gonna cut up here to see if I got any kind of spread out into that upper part. This one right here, this is the just the crimp with the vise grips. I'm sorry, I've completely spaced out, but yes, this is just the vise grips right here. So we'll cut them, and then we'll see. Actually, I'm gonna move this up a little bit because the vise grips kind of pulled out on me a little bit. I want to get a little more room. All right, here we go. That's what we got in the top. So I'm gonna raise this up and get my second cut. Now all I'm doing is snugging this up. I don't want to crimp it more with the vise than what the vise grip's already done. So I didn't cut all the way through that, but as you can see, it's actually quite a decent crimp right there. I mean, I don't know if it'll, this little bit might not even pull off. So yeah, that's, you know, vise grips, if you crimp them in all 3 spots, man, you know, they actually do the dang thing. All right, so let's move on to the 2-bit or 2-bolt method. You know, 2-bit in this case because I didn't have it. As you can see, you know, it kind of pulled out a little bit too. Let's get our first cut up top. And just as I thought on this one, the 2 bits, they only smashed in the one spot, so we have absolutely nothing up top on that one. All right, let me reset it. I mean, that's not looking too good. Let's cut down into here so we can see where the actual crimp was, what it looks like. But yeah, those, I mean, they're packed in there, but not tightly at all. So the only way we're gonna find out is to cut into it and see what it looks like right at the crimp. Okay, the other piece flew off there, so as you can see, there's wires flying out on that one. At the point of the crimp, it's a solid crimp, you know. These are different colors because this is aluminum. This is not a copper wire, it's aluminum, copper clad aluminum. And yeah, the part at the crimp is it's on there. So yeah, I mean, this is a valid method, but I mean, why wouldn't you just use the vise grips? If this is the result you get, I'm gonna have to find the other piece because it flew off. But yeah, we'll revisit all these afterwards and we'll kind of talk about them. All right, let's go. I mean, just the straight up vise, the vise. I mean, this is the one I think that it's gonna do the best. But I don't know, because the vise grips, they surprised me. First of all, because I didn't do it right the first time and it pulled right off. But yeah, when you crimp all around it, it's really nice. So let's see what this does. Well, so right up in the lug, we didn't get anything. I'm not doing these exactly in the same spot so you can see. You know, I cut this one down a little farther. That's on the regular Vise one. But, and I mean, this isn't exactly scientific. I'm just trying to show you guys through testing. But this part right here, where it did crimp, I mean, that stuff is in there solid, just like the others. Let's see if it'll pull off now. No, it is on there. Okay, we're gonna make our next cut here and see how solid that piece is. The Vise, if I had done it in more than one spot, it definitely would have been, you know, up in this area, it would have got them in there. It would have got the, because it is smashed in there. I just didn't do, I only done it in one spot. All right, let's get our second cut. Sparks flying is good, because that means it's like one solid piece there. Let me see if I can't bend this up. Okay, so that is pretty solid there. Get it to focus. All right, so I'm gonna gather up the other pieces in the first test and we'll kind of compare and see, and we'll talk about them a little bit. Okay, so we've got the first three tests and the most recent test. It turns out I lied to you. I actually, on these, I did use copper, or not copper, yeah, I did use OFC copper wire on these, and I didn't even realize that before I started doing all this. I don't know how much that's gonna play into the whole equation, but you know, I just thought I'd be open with you and tell you. So, as we can see, this method, just hammering it with nothing. It's almost useless. Don't ever do that. This method, which right here is with the 2 bits and 2 bolts. Now that method might work on the spot that it's actually, and it does better than hammering, obviously, on the spot that it's actually connected to. But if you're gonna do this, you need to do it all the way up and down. It's gonna be a real pain. Okay. This method right here, straight up Vise grip. I'm sorry, just a straight up Vise by itself. Now this method is, it's a good method. I mean, I expected this method in this test of the blue wire, but I don't know, I'm kind of leaning towards Vise grips unless you do this in multiple spots. So I just tighten it in one spot. If I lowered it, tighten it again, I think it would be, you know, maybe a little bit better than the Vise grips, but that's not what I did. Okay, the Vise grips. As you can see, it got nice push through on there, up into it. Now, of course, that was me doing it 3 or 4 times on the edges, on the middle, but they worked really well. I mean, not a whole lot you could say bad about it. I mean, it worked. It's surprising. Now let's compare that to the hammer crimp. You can see, I mean, this, at the part of the crimp, it is, I mean, it's almost one solid piece. The push through is not as good as the Vise grips, but obviously I only done it one spot, so I mean, the push through for just doing it in one spot's pretty impressive. Now this is the hydraulic crimp. I know you guys remember, I mean, I had a hard time even cutting through this. This literally seemed like one piece of solid copper, and I done it in one spot, and look at that push through right there. I mean, in my opinion, this is hands down the best method to use. Not everyone's got access to a hydraulic crimp. Not everyone wants to buy a hydraulic crimp. So this is the best method still, in my opinion. The second best method would be the hammer crimp, because you got nice push through. But you know what? It's actually closely followed by Vise grips, doing it in multiple different sections. So I mean, this is just about as good as the hammer crimp, surprisingly. I mean, I didn't expect that. The vise is also, it's right there. The thing is, I didn't crimp up here, you know. So, but where I did crimp, and I just sit there and I put as much torque on as I can. I mean, it's just as good as the vise grips. So these are all within the range, you know. Now, you may not have a vise, so, you know, you may just buy the hammer crimp, and that would be perfectly fine. A vise or a hammer crimp, or vise grips. All those methods are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with those. Now this method with the bolts. So this method worked pretty good, but it's difficult to line them up. And I just don't see the point in doing this. Why would you do this instead of just using the vise? Just use the vise, you know, just do it in multiple spots. You're already using the vise, you don't need the bolts. Like, forget about the bolts. The bolts suck. But they're still better than just hammering these style on. That's absolutely terrible. Like I said, don't do that. So, I think I pretty much covered all the most common methods being used, and I still prefer the hydraulic crimp. I like the hammer crimp a lot. I really like the hammer crimp. That being said, if you got a vise, or if you got vise grips, just use them. Don't worry about getting it. You don't need a hammer crimp if you don't absolutely. I mean, it's close. I would still buy the hammer crimp. So I'm kind of waffling back and forth. But yeah, you know, draw your own conclusions from this. I just do these to kind of it's stuff I want to know, and I figure I'll put it out there for you guys. So let me know what you think. Tell me other methods. I know soldering. I already went over that. So yeah. This is the video. Thanks for watching, guys. Ooh. All right. So I already hit the camera trying to pull this off, which is actually, it's a little shocking, but again, the cut, I'm not doing these exactly in the same spot. Sorry, that was hot.